Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
Nike is a brand that's known for taking risks and introducing new concepts, new technologies, and new ideas into the world of football boots. However, amongst all of these changes, there's been one constant, and that has been a kangaroo leather Tiempo Legend model. That is, until right now. Because for 2023 and likely the foreseeable future, the Nike Tiempo Legend has gone full synthetic. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Elite. Technically not the first full synthetic Tiempo model. That honor goes to the Legend 3 Elite that came out quite a few years ago, but it is, however, the first time there will not be a natural leather option on offer. Instead, the Legend 10 features their new Fly Touch Plus synthetic material that Nike's actually claiming is softer than natural leather. That's paired up with a bunch of other new Nike technologies, as well as familiar things like the classic Tiempo stud pattern, a pair of football boots that's going to run you $230, the same price tag as the previous model. With the question that I think most people have as it relates to a new pair of football boots being, are they any good? But in the case of these in particular, I don't think that's as important a question because we know Nike is very capable of making great synthetic uppers. The more important question as it relates to the Legend 10 Elite is, are they still Tiempo Legends when it comes to fit, feel, and overall performance? Because let's face it, nothing feels quite like kangaroo leather. But maybe these ones do, which is exactly what I want to discuss in this video as we go over all the technical details of the Legend 10, take a look at how they fit and feel on feet, and ultimately conclude whether or not this is deserving of bearing the Tiempo name. In other words, if you've been wearing Tiempo Legends, should you consider the Tiempo Legend 10 for a similar type of feel, or look elsewhere and go for something with an actual kangaroo leather upper? I'll try my best to answer all of those questions, so stick around if you want to learn more, and make sure if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, guys, if you enjoy the brutally honest content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So first things first, let's dive right into the controversy, and that is the full synthetic upper of the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite called Fly Touch Plus, basically a successor to Nike's Kangolite synthetic material that was previously seen on the CTR 360 line, Magisa Opus models. We saw it on T90 lasers. It's been used quite a bit throughout Nike's history and was also even found on Nike Tiempo models once upon a time. However, it's the first time there is not a smidge of natural leather on a top-end Nike Tiempo Legend. Now, understanding that a large percentage of the people watching this video may have never tried a pair of natural leather football boots, let alone kangaroo leather football boots, you might be asking yourself, why is this so controversial? Why is it such a big deal? And the answer to that question is that you really have to try a pair of premium leather football boots to understand the type of fit and feel that they have on offer. But I guess to break it down into two separate characteristics that I think make a kangaroo leather football boot special, it's the feel against your foot and adjustability that comes along with the stretch that a kangaroo leather upper will have, as well as the touch on the ball. Those two things are something that is very difficult to imitate with a synthetic material. So how well does Fly Touch Plus deliver on those two characteristics? Because in my eyes, that's what really makes a leather football boot feel like a leather football boot. And obviously Nike's claim of this being softer than natural leather, I think, is a little bit on the bold side. I don't want to say that it's misleading because this is legitimately a super pliable upper. There is no break-in time required with this material whatsoever, which you could argue is a positive thing over a pair of leather boots, because while a top-end pair of premium kangaroo leather boots will feel super soft out of the box, they do typically require a little bit of break-in time for them to kind of mold to your feet and feel as good as they're going to feel. This more or less has that predetermined shape to it and isn't going to stretch quite as much, which right off the bat does make them quite a bit different from a natural pair of kangaroo leather football boots, including the Nike Tiempo Legend 9 Elite that this replaces. And the shape of the boot has changed quite dramatically as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more during the on-feet portion of the video. So simply from an on-foot feel perspective, I can't say that these feel quite like a pair of kangaroo leather football boots, but they definitely are very comfortable and incredibly pliable, more so than I was honestly expecting. As for the touch on the ball, however, that's where, again, I was way more surprised than I was anticipating based on how these feel in hand. The immediate impression that I had with these boots is that this upper is incredibly thin, much more so than what we had on the Tiempo Legend 9, and quite honestly, thinner than we've ever seen on a pair of Nike Tiempo models, period. If you're looking for that super padded kind of cushion feel to the upper, you are not getting it here from the synthetic on the Legend 10 Elite. However, what I will say is despite how thin this material is, it does provide a remarkable amount of dampening on the ball when it comes to making contact. There is legitimately that sensation of a super thin leather in terms of how the ball is slightly cushioned upon impact with your foot. It's hard for me to compare the feel of this upper to a kangaroo leather alternative within the Tiempo line because again, they've never made something this thin, but immediately the touch on the ball, or at least the dampening sensation that you got from this upper, reminded me a lot of the super thin kangaroo leather found on the now discontinued Puma King Platinum, which was an excellent pair of football boots. Where I think these very much differ from natural leather boots, however, is in the grippiness that you have on the surface of the upper. And if you look closely, it does have that artificial leather grain finish. Obviously, these embossed waves kind of acting as flex grooves obviously are not very leather-like in terms of their appearance, but to the touch, it does have a similar texture to leather. However, I did notice that this upper was significantly grippier on the ball, and on the lateral side, you just have the embossed texturing. On the medial side, you will find these 3D grip dots added to the surface, something that was also found on the Tiempo Legend 9 Elite. However, I don't think these grip dots, while they're noticeable to the touch, really feel that different on the ball from a grip perspective, in that the entire upper just offers not necessarily a sticky feel, but certainly more grip on the ball than any natural leather football boot that I've ever worn, which again, I can't say is a good or bad thing. It's simply just different from past Tiempo models, but if you like having that little bit of additional grip while maintaining kind of that light dampening from a pair of leather football boots, you are in fact getting it from FlyTouch Plus. It's a much more impressive material than I was honestly expecting it to be. ACC All Conditions Control also makes its return to the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite after the branding being noticeably absent from the Legend 9. And as I've said, over the years with ACC, some boots that have had it have legitimately had a particular texture that was consistent across other boots that had ACC. But over the years, it's kind of one of those things where they print it on the upper and every boot has different levels of grip in both dry and wet conditions. So whether or not this is actually enhancing the grip on the ball is difficult to say, but I will say that in general, it is grippier on the surface of the upper than the average leather football boot. Whether or not that's related to ACC, I can't really say. In typical modern Tiempo fashion, across the top of the foot, they've done basically what they've been doing for the last several generations, in that you have that nice deep central lacing system allowing for plenty of adjustability, something that I'm personally a really big fan of. And then you're going to find that central portion of the upper filled in with a thin elasticated Flyknit material. It is just attached on either side of the upper. It's not a Flyknit tunnel or anything like that, like we saw on the Tiempo Legend 8. Just keeps it really, really simple. And because of how thin it is, it matches the thickness of the upper and overall just works really well. It gives the boot a very streamlined feel across your foot, where I think if you have worn Tiempos in the past and you've found that they are a little bit bulky, this is easily the least bulky Nike Tiempo model that the brand has ever made. That Flyknit material, of course, flows into what is still a low-cut construction. They added this little ribbon here, which, I don't know, I'm still kind of undecided on whether or not I like the way that it looks. It almost seems like packaging that shouldn't be there. I'm not crazy about it, but it ultimately does nothing nothing as far as hurting the comfort or performance of the football boot, but you will find at the back it's cut relatively low, and there's actually no structure to the back heel. There is an internal heel counter, however, at the very back it's cut very low, and even on the sides it's really low. No issues here in regards to comfort, but in terms of impact protection, should you get kicked back here, there's just not a lot happening. It's just the padding from the heel liner itself. But I will say the heel in general is very, very comfortable, and I think they absolutely nailed the shape. Again, step-in comfort, definitely a strong aspect of the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite. Inside, the lining material is a really soft microfiber, the perfect amount of padding. Really like what they've done here. Then the insole, fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. It features this kind of microfiber liner on the surface, and you can see it says Nike Football Cushion Technology with these two little zones, one in the heel and one in the forefoot. The one in the forefoot almost lines up with this cutout in the sole plate, which we'll talk about in just a second, but the one under the heel, there's just nothing under the heel of the football boot, so I'm not sure why they put that there. And if you look inside, which is kind of difficult for me to show you, it's a standard sole plate construction. There is nothing left exposed whatsoever. Even these little cutouts right here, they're simply on the outside of the sole plate, and they're not something that you really feel. So putting this on the insole as if you're going to feel these two spots, to make a long story short, you're not. With the insole itself being pretty standard for Nike's top-end models, a solid layer of yellow foam, and in general, pretty decent. As for the sole plate and stud pattern, despite technically being all new tooling coming from the previous generation, it's pretty much the standard of what we've come to expect from a Nike Tiempo model. Nothing here is going to feel unfamiliar. It's a very flexible feel to the sole plate, super natural, which I think works well with what they've done with the upper, with realistically the new flagship feature for the sole plate, if you want to call it that, being these pressure point cutouts. A very small one right here and a very big one underneath the ball of your foot in the forefoot area. However, those cutouts are filled in with hard plastic, and again, if you look inside the football boot with the insole removed, there is nothing that is physically different in terms of what you can see and in terms of what you can feel. These just are not noticeable whatsoever. I will say the underfoot feel of the sole plate is very comfortable. I didn't have any issues with pressure points or stud pressure for that matter, but these being features that you're actually going to notice, unfortunately, that's just not the case. I view these as more of a marketing thing more than anything. And then as far as the stud pattern is concerned, you get your bladed studs under the heel that are identical to the Tiempo Legend 9 with your conical studs in the forefoot and the mercurial toe pick studs. The only thing that's really changed coming from Legend 9 is that the round studs themselves have actually gotten a little bit smaller in shape and profile, meaning that they dig into the ground maybe a little bit more easily and give you a little bit more bite. But in general, you would have a very hard time telling a difference in terms of feel or performance between this sole plate and the Legend 9s. Overall, though, it's a classic Tiempo stud pattern. There's a reason why it's been around for a long time. And if you're looking for that good balance of great traction with still that freedom to twist and pivot, this is pretty much as good as it gets. When it comes to weight, I think most people would anticipate the Legend 10 weighing less than the Legend 9 it replaces, because this is kangaroo leather and this is synthetic, and pretty much all football boot marketing has led us to believe that synthetic is lighter than natural leather. Not actually the case, as we've proven several times using an actual scale on this channel, but more so because the Legend 10's synthetic upper is so much thinner than the Legend 9, it of course has lost a little bit of weight. So both in the same size 9.5 US, we'll start off with the outgoing Legend 9 Elite, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.5 ounces, the equivalent of 212 grams, which is actually really light for a boot of this type. Change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the Legend 10s, and you can see that they weigh in at 7 ounces exactly, the equivalent of 198 grams. Which, for those doing the math at home, that's a weight difference of 14 grams, something that might not seem like a lot, but given that the Legend 9 was already a very lightweight football boot, these falling into the sub 200 gram category puts them at an elite level speed boot weight range. These are going to be lighter than something like a Speed Portal, very similar to the new Crazy Fast Point 1 for those that want a direct comparison. And even in comparison to a pair of Superfly 9 Elites, these only weigh 5 grams more. In other words, despite not being marketed as a pair of speed boots, they are speed boot light. On feet, the only thing negative I can say about the Legend 10 Elite is that it doesn't feel quite like a super soft kangaroo leather upper. With that said, I think it comes closer to feeling like a true leather upper than any other synthetic football boot ever has. It is really, really impressive what they've done with this Fly Touch Plus synthetic material, where the pliability, the way that it bends with your foot, and in general, even the touch on the ball is so convincing in terms of being leather-like. The only thing that really gives it away is that it still doesn't match the slight stretch and elasticity of natural leather, not even just out of the box, but as you wear them in. It's not going to have that same little bit of stretch. This is a slightly more structured material, which you might actually view as a good thing, depending on personal preference in terms of fit, lockdown, and overall responsiveness, where I would make the argument that these are definitely going to be more responsive than that of the Tiempo Legend 9 Elites, but also have just a tighter overall wrap on your foot. The shape of the boot has been changed specifically through the forefoot and toe box area, where it's definitely a little bit more narrow versus the more wide rounded shape of the Legend 9, which I'm not particularly a fan of. I preferred the shape of the Legend 9, but overall, with the laces tied tight, they are just super, super comfortable, very flexible. I think they did an awesome job with the heel. There is no friction, no discomfort whatsoever. These are boots that you could pretty much wear straight into a match and not have to worry about blisters at all. From a width perspective, other than the toe box being a little bit more tapered than I would like it to be, I think these are going to be suitable for most people. They're not super wide. Again, definitely less width than what was found on the Legend 9 Elite, but I think they will be suitable for most foot types. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, is the Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Elite a true Tiempo when it comes to fit, feel, and overall performance? And I really think the answer to that question has to be no. If you're comparing them directly to the Legend 9 Elite with its full kangaroo leather upper, if you were buying a pair of Legends for the feel of leather, the padding of leather, some of the protection on offer from a more padded leather upper, and in general, the ability for the upper to mold to the shape of your foot with some wear time, you're simply not going to get that from the Legend 10. As much as this does have leather-like characteristics in terms of touch on the ball, overall, they don't necessarily feel like true kangaroo leather football boots. So if that's what you're after, either stock up on Legend 9 Elites or look elsewhere for your leather football boot needs. With that said, while they might not necessarily be a great representation of what the Tiempo line has represented up until this point, I do think the Legend 10 Elite is a phenomenal pair of football boots. And as a continuation of what Nike was building on with CTR 360 and Nike Magista Opus, I really feel like this is a solid pair of football boots that a lot of people are really going to enjoy should they give them a chance. It's not a Tiempo, but it's very good.